Hey guys, what's going on? This is Travis P11. I want to welcome you back to the channel. Well, today what we're going to do, guys, is take a look at an unboxing and a general overview, as well as an installation of this KAK Industries Shockwave Blade Pistol Stabilizer Buffer Tube. Alright, so when you buy yourself an AR-15 pistol, okay, most of the time you're just going to get just its own, I guess you could say, proprietary buffer tube that's necessary to be mounted in order for the gun to be considered a pistol. Alright, now I don't have the KAK Industry buffer tube mounted on this pistol just yet because I was going to try to see how the stock Palmetto State Armory buffer tube functioned. Well, the two times I've taken this AR-15 pistol out to the range, after so many rounds, the stabilizing blade ended up moving. And I've even tried, two times I've tried using Loctite, you know, cleaning the threads and degreasing them, and using blue Loctite, and the screw is staying tight. It's just that the blade pistol under stress of being pushed and being fired, it's moving on the tube itself. And when you see the design of the tube, you're going to understand why it's not very stable and why I decided to go ahead and go this route. Alright, so we'll talk about some of the basic tools that we're going to use for this installation. We've got ourselves a Allen head screw. I'm probably going to guess it's maybe about a 1/4 inch. It's not marked, but make sure you have yourself a set of Allen heads and you should be all set to go. I'm going to use some blue Loctite on the screw again, as well as on the threads for the buffer tube. Now, the other thing that was kind of bugging me, and we'll see if the Loctite helps out, is that the buffer tube has a tendency also to come loose, and there is no castle nut on the back that's staked, so you kind of run into an issue where if you just give it a little bit of torque, you can end up unscrewing that buffer tube, right? Now, I've never had any problems with Palmetto State Armory's lowers before. In fact, I find all their gear to be very high quality, and I've purchased 2 of their rifles before. And I'm also going to use some various patches just to clean up some of the grease and so on. So let's go move on to the unboxing and see what this buffer tube looks like. Okay, so for the buffer tube here, I paid, I want to say $12 or $13 for it, and then it was $6 for shipping. I did order from Primary Arms. They have some insanely fast shipping. I mean, I usually get the stuff within 3 days, and it's coming from Pearland, Texas. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and I apologize if I am. No offense to the good people who live down there in Texas. So, let's check this out and see what we got. I have my invoice right there. You don't need to see that. Okay, so it's just KAK Shockwave tube. Okay. Now again, those of you that have seen a traditional AR-15 buffer tube, you know that it's got little notches in it that you use with your stock and so on. This one has little dimples that you can use so that you are not permanently affixing the blade pistol stabilizer to the buffer tube, but you are making it more stable and safer to use. Okay, so tube is a very sturdy design, very, wow, nice and solid, good solid threads on there. Okay, it does look pretty good. I like that. And remember, when you're going to be running an AR-15, you got to make sure that as of April of 2017, your length of pull from the back of your stabilizing brace as well as the front of your trigger is no more than 13.5 inches. Okay, so if you've already got, well, I'm sorry, if you don't have a buffer tube on the back of your AR-15 and you're putting this on for the first time, you'll be able to skip ahead a little bit into the video until I start the installation process. Otherwise, if you have one and you've never done this before, I'm just going to walk you through it. There's a few little steps you need to know, and I'll show you how this is going to, how it's all going to work. All right, so hang tight. Here we go. Okay guys, so right off the bat, don't run into the problems that I ran into. I didn't even think about this when I was doing this project. I'm telling you this early. Alright, so the PSA buffer tube has a ridge in the back of it, and that's going to press against the plate that keeps your rear takedown pin in place. It presses against the spring that keeps your rear takedown pin in place, okay? The KAK Industry buffer tube is a little bit different, okay? The problem with this is that it screws in, but they don't give you any way to tighten up the buffer tube to the point that the back plate's going to stay pressed up against the rear of the receiver. So you need to be sure that you have a castle nut before you do this procedure, especially if you've got a castle nut already in your AR pistol, it's not a problem. This PSA lower did not come with one. It didn't need one because of that ridge that's cut in there, because of that band. So make sure you got a castle nut, and then after that we can proceed putting this piece back on. Otherwise, you don't have a way to keep the pressure on the back plate to keep your rear takedown pin in place, and you're going to run into issues. Alright, let's resume. Okay, so let's go ahead and ensure that the firearm is unloaded. Now I do keep a loaded magazine in the firearm because it is kept for home defense. Okay, let's go ahead and open up the action. Check the chamber. It is clear. Okay, go ahead and let that go. I'm going to go ahead and dry fire it this time because it is safe to do so. There we go. Alright, let's go ahead and remove that buffer tube. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to push back on the rear takedown pin. So we'll go ahead and pull that out. on this rifle just happens to be just a little bit tight, but again, I'm using an upper from a different company that I'm using for a lower. There we go. Okay, we'll go ahead and take that apart. Okay, simple enough. I think for simplicity's sake, we'll just go ahead and remove the upper too. So go ahead and push on that front pin. Just pull it across. And remove your upper assembly from the lower receiver. Okay. Alright, simple enough. Okay, I went ahead and pushed the hammer back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be pushing in on this little pin right here that keeps your buffer and your buffer spring in the buffer tube. I'll be pushing down on that as I'm rotating the buffer tube. I got to think here, counterclockwise, I believe. So I will go ahead and do that in the next step. I just want to show you a close-up of this. And I did go ahead and push the hammer back so that way I can get the spring out with no issues at all. Okay, so we should be all set there. Okay, let's go ahead and unscrew that. Now, as you unscrew the buffer tube, you're also going to have this rear plate, which may or may not have the sling swivel on it. There's going to be a spring behind that, and you need to put pressure on the front of that too, or just slowly let out the buffer tube. Otherwise, you're going to shoot that spring. And if you don't put pressure on this pin right here, it's going to launch and it's going to go flying, and you could lose it. Now, if you see some excessive oil on this firearm, it's because it just came back from the range the other day, and I just got done cleaning it, so that's why it seems to be a little bit greasy. But I usually do that before I go out, and then I just wipe everything down with a patch. So, all right, let's go ahead and unscrew that rear buffer tube. Okay, with the hammer down, the next step in the process is pretty easy. What you want to do is just push your thumb on the little buffer weight on the back here, and put some pressure on that. Push down on this pin with a punch or an Allen wrench or anything flat, and then just slowly release. Now this is under pressure, so keep pressure on it. And go ahead and take out your buffer spring and your buffer weight, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this buffer tube counterclockwise, and while we're doing that, there's a couple things you want to do. You want to make sure that you are putting pressure on this pin in the front right here, even though the buffer tube is out, or even though the buffer spring is out. Once you pull back on the buffer tube, that's going to launch out at you. So while I'm pushing on it, what I'm going to do is push down with my left thumb on that pin, okay? And then I'm going to take my finger and pull back on this little sling loop back here, because there's a spring underneath here that's going to be putting pressure on the plate. Now, if you have a state castle nut, you're going to have to get yourself a castle nut removal tool and go through that whole process. I don't know if AR pistols tend to come with a state castle nut or not. This one does not, so let's go ahead and continue. So I'm going to go ahead and just push down, like I said before, my finger, pull back with my index finger. Okay, rotate counterclockwise, and you're going to feel a lot of pressure. In fact, I'm going to put a patch on that pin. It's poking into my finger here. You're going to feel some pressure on that pin as that spring pushes up as you rotate out on this tube. Okay, it's very simple. Now we'll take the blade off here in just a second. And again, hold on to everything until the tube is out. Okay, you slowly start to release the pressure. There we go. Okay, and your buffer tube comes right out. So you've got yourself the little pin with the spring right there, and another spring on the back right here that you're going to need to keep handy when you go to put the next buffer tube on. Okay, next step. Okay guys, so what I've done is I put just a little bit of thread locking compound, some Loctite on the first couple threads of the buffer tube. Not really necessary, but it'll help keep everything secure. And I've got the castle nut that I had to pull off another AR because I didn't realize that I didn't need one for this procedure. So anyway, no big deal. We've got the spring put back into place that puts the pressure on the rear takedown pin. We've got your plate right here. I'm going to do this from this angle. I may be blocking the camera just a little bit. You'll need to push down on pressure on the top of this pin while you're screwing the buffer tube in and pressing on the back plate, keeping everything in place. Really not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of pressure right here. Start to move up the castle nut. Okay, rotate the buffer tube. Now I'm starting to see that buffer tube getting closer and closer to the pin. So now at this point, I'm going to use my left hand to press on the back plate and lock it into place. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and press down on the top here and just kind of hold it with my hand. And turn the buffer tube. Whoops. Tell you what, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and just put our finger up on the top here. There we go. Use my index finger and press with my thumb. There we go. And go ahead and turn a couple twists, and that pin is going to be locked into place. Okay, make sure it's nice and secure. You'll know if you go too far because you're going to end up hitting it. There we go. Okay, we're nice. Now we're going to go ahead and push on the back of that plate again. Little spring is kind of pesky, isn't it? There we go. Okay, go ahead and turn that castle nut. There we go. There we go. Now we got that on there right. Okay, I'm going to make a few fine adjustments here off camera. What you want are for these dimples to be straight down, and you want the castle nut to be tied up against the back plate. So I'm going to mess around with this a little bit, and when we come back, we'll take a look at it once it's finally installed. All right, so it just took me a few seconds here. If installed correctly, you're going to have the back plate, you're going to have the castle nut, the buffer tube. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and put the Shockwave Blade on, kind of get it set to where I want it, and then I will make some fine-tune adjustments with the rear buffer tube to make sure that the blade is straight down. I don't want it off at an angle, I just want it going straight down. So I more or less looks like everything lines up with the rear going right down the center at the lower receiver. But until I get the blade on, I really can't tell, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now to mount it, it's very simple. Let's get this out of the way here. You just have this little set screw in the bottom of the blade, and you're just going to put this on the back, and you'll turn it until it goes in one of those little dimples and get it exactly how you want it. Tighten it to the point that it's tight enough, and then you should be good to go. I'm going to try it without Loctite on this screw. I've already tried it once, and it didn't matter on the old buffer tube, so we'll see if those little dimples make a difference. Because of the way the screw is designed, it fits right in the dimple perfectly and locks it into place, but just in a way that's considered legal so that it's not permanently hard mounted, so you can loosen it to take it off if you have to. You're not permanently mounting it to the buffer tube, which is what keeps the pistol defined as a pistol and not a short barrel rifle. Okay, so I'm going to do all those different steps, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like once I get it all put on. You can go ahead and put your buffer spring back in, and as soon as you get the fine adjustments made, and then we'll come back in just a sec. All right. Okay guys, I made a few fine adjustments to the buffer tube and the castle nut. I've got it ready to go. And again, remember, make sure you've got a castle nut on standby when you do this install, because this buffer tube is not designed to put pressure on the back of that plate, as I just got done, as I mentioned earlier in the video. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just reattach our upper and lower, get them to where they need to be. Okay. Okay, we got the front and the rear pin in. Let's go ahead and just check the functionality. Okay, nothing's binding, nothing is getting caught. Sounds good. All right, so now the next thing we'll do is get this out and range test it and see if it's a little more comfortable to shoot with and see how it fits. Yeah, it is a little bit front heavy, so there you go, guys. All right, so that was the install of the KAK Industries Shockwave Blade tube, which gives you a little bit more adjustments on your AR-15. All right, guys, I want to thank you for joining me today. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Please like or subscribe. You can also follow me over on gunchannels.com, where you can find me at the Ordinary Average Guy Gun channel. And otherwise, guys, I think that's about it. So I want you to have fun. I want you to be safe. And as you know, we will talk to you soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.